Welcome to the second episode of the ACPM, which stands for the Association of Construction Project Managers. I am Nomvula Ratsiku. I'm the CEO of the ACPM. I'm the co-host, and I'm with my host, the president, Anthony Afodofe, and also CEO of Akweni Group.
Thank you, Nomvula.
Thank you. And we are in conversation with the president of the SACPCMP, which is the South African Council for the Project and Construction Management Professions. So today I'm sitting with two presidents. How privileged I am, huh? What an honor. So just an introduction again to our episodes. This is our second episode, which we call the ACPM Spotlight Podcast, where we are in conversation with various industry players. So we are quite excited with our second episode because we are in conversation with the president of the SACPCMP, which is the statutory body that has accredited the ACPM as a voluntary association. And we just want to welcome you, President, today.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. Just a bit about the ACPM. The ACPM registered, as I said, is a voluntary association. It registers individual members and corporate members. Corporate members are those that are having project management consulting firms. So in terms of our category, we've got individual category. We have an affiliate member. We have an associate member. We have a full member. And we also have two complementary membership categories. One for students who are registered at the 13 universities that have accredited courses of construction studies, and also our retired members, because we still need the skill, we need the wisdom, so they are then responsible for mentoring our students. And then we have two new categories. We've started last month with the graduate membership. The graduate membership is basically part of our transformatory program and initiative to ensure that there is smooth transition for the graduates into the industry and also into their professional registration. And we are quite excited about our new category, which is property development manager, which we will be registering from the 1st of June. It was supposed to have been the 15th of May, but now it has been rescheduled to the 1st of June. With that said, I hope it gives you an idea of who the ACPM is. And with that said, I would then like my host to then start the conversation. President to president.
Thank you, Nomvula, for the opportunity today. President Ratsiku, you are in the hot seat today.
Thank you.
But we're going to take it light on you. So to kickstart the podcast today, I'd like to take the opportunity to welcome you for taking time out of your busy schedule to come and have this conversation with us. But I believe it's a much needed conversation and it's overdue. And I would like you to be free and candid, and let's have a conversation. These are conversations. So to kickstart, being a busy man, I would like to take you back a little bit before we come to the present. Construction industry. What inspired President Ratsiku to think of the construction industry as a choice of a career path from your high school days? What inspired that decision?
Thanks, President, and thanks for the opportunity, Nomvula. I'm gonna be light, as you said. When we were growing up, I think I was one of those boys who were being told that you're not my type by every girl. So in my mind, I've always said to myself, I'll have to find a solution for this, so that as I grow up, There must just be somebody somewhere who will beat them all and say, you're my type. So one thought that the construction industry as a field of choice and career would solve that problem. And it did. It did solve that. So, but yeah, in the serious note, while we were growing up, I think from the villages, I come from Limpopo, in the Ibembe district area, in a village called Silom. So we have always had a serious backlog of infrastructure that affected water, electricity, roads, soccer grounds that we even had to play at, to an extent that at some point we'll queue until very late and we can't see each other, but we are also trying to chase water. Although I was not the core person doing that, but sometimes when I accompany some of my family members, I would see that these are rough conditions that we are growing in. So the curiosity to be part of these solutions of infrastructure for me, and luckily my maths was not too bad, so it allowed me to enter the space. So I juggled between making a choice between civil engineering, QS, construction management, but the good thing is that quantity surveying and construction management were a combined study. That you can only then choose specializing while you move up to your BTech in my instant. And I started these studies at the Tshwane University of Technology. I joined the Building Science Department under the Faculty of Engineering and Project Management. And the rest is history. We are here.
Thank you very much for that background.
I'm glad to hear that you dealt with your emotional debt. Just to follow up on what you've said, I'll confine it within the construction industry in terms of, your professional registration, although I know that there is registration even outside of the construction industry. Can you maybe just share with us, in terms of your career, what were the key challenges? Being registered as a quantity surveyor, construction project manager, construction manager, what were the key challenges and how did you overcome those challenges?
Yeah, I think to start with, there's always been a challenge of getting a meaningful scope in the industry.
Okay.
Particularly as a young black fellow. Other fellows just feel like you must join their meetings and take minutes. Instead of taking charge of the drawings and review and issue site instructions as you grow and develop. And that is not my challenge alone. I know QSs by study and project managers by study, civil engineers by study, who when they join the industry, they get undermined and allocated a very meaningless scope. So that becomes a challenge because as you develop and you want to register, you have to prove that you've covered the full cycle.
Yes.
You've covered the identification of work. So young black professionals still suffer from that. Yeah. And I'm not unique. I think I experienced that quite a lot. And the other one was the opportunity, where to start your career, where to work. And in fact, are you going to have an opportunity to start intensively in terms of exposure? Or you are going to spend a year being a secretary of the main guy, who's the main QS or the main project manager? So those are some of the challenges that even today are still existing. I mean, when you review reports in view of wanting to assist others, you can realize that people are not exposed to the full scope of what they are supposed to be doing.
No, thank you for that. And also just a follow-up, then how did you deal with any headaches or challenges? Because now you transitioned, from being fully employed to starting your own company. So from corporate to business, and on top of that, as chairperson as well of a regulatory body. So it was quite a transition within a period of about 2 years, I think. So how did you go about that? I'm interested in that because most of the time we talk about all of these titles, but we never ask, what it really takes. Yeah. So I'm interested in that transitioning.
Yeah. I think for me, the transition forced itself through me.
Okay.
There was never a time where I had to decide that this is the direction, although I knew what I wanted to do, but in terms of the timing, the events had to force that I take certain decisions faster and move. You would imagine a situation where you've got a council meeting to approve very important decisions, and you are telling the council that my boss did not approve my leave. so it just had to balance their interests. To say, if I have to serve the industry, let me plug myself fully into the industry and also experience the challenges that my fellow professionals are experiencing. So that one day I do not start a discussion and they challenge me by saying, you are not in the thick of things. That's why you are talking like that. You don't know the challenge of pursuing work because you are covered elsewhere by your employer. So I had to consolidate that into one place to say, while I talk or have appetite to solve the challenges of these professionals, these challenges must also affect me directly. And a simple example is, what does it mean to have the industry operating with the tariff of fees approved in 2019? Or operating with identification of work that is still dated 2019. It must hit my heart because if I am somewhere in some office that doesn't deal with this, my pace of resolving these problems as well will not matter.
Wow, so it explains, because I was just wondering, in this whole period doing all of this, quite an interesting angle, I would say, and quite sacrificial as well. And the idea of work, I'd rather not even go to that topic. I don't even want to go for a follow-up question on
it will define my future, unfortunately.
President Ratsiku, I think for the sake of our listeners and viewers, a lot of people don't understand that being called a president is not a status position. We are called to actually serve the industry, right? And in using the word service, we need to make sure that we fulfill certain mandates to service the industry and the people who are operating in the industry, both individuals and organizations. So now, been given the opportunity to become the SACPCMP president, obviously there are some mandates that you need to fulfill as a president. Would you please shed some light on those mandates for the sake of the general public who are listening to this podcast?
Yeah. So I'm going to speak about some of the mandates that are emanating from the Act or extracted direct from the Act of CPM, which is where the SACPCMP is established. Then I'm also going to touch into some of the mandates that come by interpretation of being a player and role player in the industry.
Yes.
So we have 13 mandates that are documented black and white. Maybe I may not have to mention all of them, but in terms of, I've mentioned the identification of work of all our registered professionals. And I've also then mentioned the determination of the tariff of fees guidelines in terms of what do they charge industry when they are in the practice. Some of those that are very close to me and I deal with them as often is the appeals. When the applicants are not happy that they did not make it. And it's a space I'm quite passionate about because apart from this individual upgrading themselves to become a professional, you have to also show compassion, that you understand some of the challenges that are making them to struggle, to not cover and understand the entire full scope, and also bring an element of hope that it doesn't end here. We do not fail people, we defer people to go and cover their backlogs in terms of the scope.
Important point,
Yeah, sure. And then we also have an element of recognition prior learning. We all know that in the construction industry, you will have people who have been around and they are intensively experienced, but they were not fortunate enough to cover the academic side of things. And that element is important because in the industry, most of professionals were actually not taught by those that are equally educated as them. They were taught by the veterans of the industry who were able to take them through to say, this is where you start, this is how you interpret the drawings, this is how you write a report, and this is how you establish a site, and you identify the hazards on your side, baseline risk assessment, and all those type of things. So the recognition prior learning is important because it bridges a gap between education and experience. And for me, I always say, it doesn't matter how brilliant you are, you'll never buy experience.
Of course.
If somebody is experienced, even if you've got all the papers, you have to respect what they know so that you can balance your academic qualification with that practical experience. And maybe the last two components, obviously, professional registration itself, it goes without saying. And our international agreements, because those are, they actually set us up strategically to engage with the global partners who are also playing in the project management space and the construction industry at large. But when I said I'll speak about a soft mandate which comes out of interpretation, is the element of transformation. For me, if you improve everything and you professionalize, but you forget that the country is not yet where it's supposed to be, you've got backlogs that you have to balance between historical disadvantaged individual and those that were advantaged before. And when you do that, you don't kick out the advantaged, because this disadvantaged must learn from those that were advantaged.
Definitely.
So for me, is that element of rebalancing and ensure that the industry continues smooth to provide professionals that are ready to deal with the challenges of infrastructure.
Interesting. I think just to follow up on that, you've used a key interesting word of transformation. I think it's one key visionary area we have at the ACPM as well. I mean, noting that the ACPM is a voluntary association under the council, I think there's some alignment that we are picking up there.
Yes.
So in terms of taking it forward, the industry is small but big. The industry is not only localized in South Africa alone. Most of our practitioners are also outside of the country practicing. So when you start to use the word transformation, are we only syncing it to South Africa, or are we also thinking outside of the country in terms of the bigger international opportunities that you do speak about? And then in line with that, how do you see that into the future as far as CM and CPMs are concerned? If you can elaborate on that for me, please.
That's a very important question, because the way the world operates, it's starting to be a global village.
Yeah.
Where it's not an issue for one to be working in Saudi Arabia when they were from South Africa. And it also dates back as well. But also, there is no one single country that will be able to provide all employment opportunities for its citizens. Exactly. Hence, this element of internationalization is very important. So I aspire to see a situation where our accreditations, and they are getting there because of some of our voluntary associations that are sitting international, like Raik and others, CIOB and them. So if you look at transformation and you look at it from the borders of your country only, you get very limited. I must be able to move with my accreditation from South Africa and go and work in Botswana, go and work in Swaziland, go and work in Italy, go and work in Europe, and. Because for me, that transformation also speaks about bridging a gap of how we relate with other countries.
Exactly.
And we must also move with our model of working from here and go and influence other countries as much as we also learn from them. So I don't look at it from the corners of South Africa only. I think it's important that we train people that are able to play in all fields in the globe.
No, thank you very much for that.
I just have a follow-up as well. I loved how you put the issue of recognition of prior learning, but also transformation to say, there's a place for all role players. And I think at this point, I'm also thinking in terms of transformation, we're not only looking at numbers or race, but there's also other programs which I would commend the council for, because if you look at the specified categories, you also started to identify other categories for professional recognition that were not identified before. And for me, that's transformation still as well, because now we are also looking at the full value chain. If you think about your construction health and safety, your building inspectors, your professional mentors, and I'm sure there's also others in the pipeline, which I think is also something that has been done well in terms of looking into the value chain, because it does give you, certain recognition and also enables certain things that would otherwise not have been enabled have you not been professionally registered.
Correct. And as part of our mandates as well, we also look into new accreditations that the industry is in need of. And we are working on some that are going to be announced as time goes on. But you touched on the very important categories of health and safety and building inspectorate. If you are to extract a lesson just from what happened from George, you will realize that a key question to ask is the building approval processes. I don't have answers, and I don't think anybody has for now, as much as we were involved in trying to understand what's going on. Another key question is, who was the safety officer?
On site,
by the way. Was there an interaction between the safety officer and the structural engineer to speak about potential structural collapse and how to identify it? Somebody who's working on a construction site must be able to say, what are our risks today?
Yes.
And what are we doing about them? So that is very important for me to say. We must always look at construction as a full hospital that must be able to provide a full solution to somebody who comes in need of an infrastructure product. And I'm using hospital intentional because we have a perception that construction can be done by everybody. While if I go to a hospital, I can't be operated by everybody. Yes. Now, in this country, if everybody is going to build a bridge, we are in serious problems. If everybody is going to build a high-standing structure, we are in serious problems. So I think it's high time that the industry itself demands respect. That I'm not in actuarial science. I can't process an insurance claim. And I'm not going to go into that space. So it's important for me that everybody who jumps into my space, they must be trained as good as I'm trained, as good as I am trained, or others who are even trained much better than me.
So I think that brings me to a nice position, because there's a lot of members in the industry, right? So this is a little bit of a touchy subject, talking about the George issue. So there's the issue of getting people registered and trained, having that continuous learning process, right? There's a bit of murmur in the industry that the council is a little bit slow in terms of the output of applications from members that are trying to join either as a candidate or either as a professional CPM or a professional CM. So I personally have had a lot of talks with industry practitioners where they've personally come to myself to assist them in unlocking some backlogs at the council. Do you want to share some light on that in terms of the time frames of approvals or declines of the applications? Because it's part and parcel of the issues of getting registered people appointed to sites.
So these are issues of bread and butter. I don't expect happiness in pace. If I go buy bread, I want to make sure I transact as quick as possible and go home and have breakfast. To an extent, even if they are fast, I don't owe them a compliment when I buy bread at the shop. I am aware that there are candidates who came into our system and registered very fast, but they did not send us feedback of the same pace.
Okay.
Because what they are dealing with is the economic opportunity that they need to run to. And fair enough, they don't have to come back and say, well done to me, because we are just doing our jobs. The other aspect of it is that the SACPCMP, as you know, two first letters SA stand for South Africa.
Yes.
And our staff complement as well, with time, it will have to grow to acknowledge that you are serving the whole country. But there are issues involved, revenue collection. What are the streams you have to collect revenue that will be able to help you to beef up the capacity in a manner that if you apply today, you are able to get a response by Friday, and you come to the interview on Monday, and within 7 days we have closed your registration and application process. So the pace currently is dictated by a number of things. People register when they are already stranded in this country. There are very few individuals who plan for a professional registration to say, at this age, at this time, I must be a professional.
Yeah.
They miss employment opportunities. Then they realize that part of the advert frequently, it's saying I must be professionally registered. When they come to the council, they want us to respond with the pace of their job application. It's not doable.
There's point to that. I get that as well. In terms of maybe a solution towards the pain, probably from a suggestion point of view would be to say, would there be an opportunity to add to volunteers in the membership committee at councils to help unlock some of the blockages in the interim? Because I'm sure there must be parties in the industry who will be willing to assist at a pro bono pace to be able to assist the council with such solutions to unlock the blockade. I think it's something we can explore as a council and as a VA as a solution, because we keep talking about problems sometimes, and we don't necessarily come up with robust solutions to make sure that the industry is served. So I think it's just a suggestion from our side in doing that, because it leads me to the next point. It leads me to the next point, which is linked to the issue, to say the SACPCMP engages a lot of stakeholders. And through that stakeholder management process, we can also unlock free hands, right, who are qualified to assist in the process. So as the president of the SACPCMP, there are stakeholders that you engage, maybe for the sake of the public, because we get asked these questions on the streets, to just give insight to the stakeholders that are embodied within the SACPCMP's framework of fraternity, and then speaking to that, maybe through that environment, we can together seek additive solutions to some of the problems that we appreciate that you have.
No, sure. Yeah. Obviously, I think it's coming from a good place from yourself to say there are players who may want to assist. Yes. And I think as an organization, we definitely appreciate that. You can never get to a point where you say you don't need assistance. Otherwise, arrogance is kicking in. But there's just one aspect that I would like to say. I think the strength of volunteers is needed more in mentoring candidates who are supposed to be registered. We may beef up capacity of assessments, but we get everybody else coming to be declined because they don't have a mentor from the industry, you know. So we have to do that balancing act. But obviously, in terms of the offer to help anytime. But it's important for, and I like you asked the question that has to do with stakeholder management. It's important for the industry to understand what we do. We handle confidential information. Confidential information cannot be handled by everybody. In your family, that you tell person A that don't tell person B, and person B goes and tells C and say don't tell D.
And it gets distorted.
Before you know it, this secret is sitting with 27 people who still consider it a secret, but they don't know that everybody knows it. Therefore, it's no longer a secret. You know, so with what we deal with from time to time, we have to make sure that whoever we take as part of the team to assist us understand the confidentiality of what we are dealing with. Yeah. Otherwise, you just have everybody sharing everybody's CV, like what's happening in this industry. Yeah. If you don't know your CV, your personal one is everywhere, as protected as you think it is. You know? So, yeah. So, but on the element of stakeholders. In fact, I learned this also when I joined the council, that I never thought we have a place to engage the Competition Commission. But 3 weeks back, we were sitting with the Competition Commission. I never thought we have a place to engage the Auditor General. But 2 weeks back, we were sitting with the Auditor General. Okay. You know, just in the incident of George alone, we were sitting with a lot of departments, together with a lot of media institutions as well. You know, so our stakeholder list is quite broad. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's pushed by the issues that we have to respond to from time to time. Okay. So for us, opportunities to engage with more people who want to bring solutions into the industry, definitely that is welcome with open hands.
Mm-hmm. Right. I just want to comment on something that you said, you know, to say, which is a fact, you know, other people will rush. That is what we're experiencing even as a VA. People will rush because they need something tomorrow. They want to do the registration now. But you also raise another important point to say people must plan, like to say this year I want to start registration and all of that. But I think what we also need to do when we throw it back at ourselves, we must provide that awareness. We must provide that education, because sometimes even when you engage with students, all they know is that I must register with this council, or they do not necessarily know. And we cannot necessarily say people are ignorant, because we are also not out there creating the awareness, educating them even about the value that it will bring to them as individuals. Yes, we cannot guarantee work, but let the work at least find you ready. And I think with the graduate membership, that transitioning, that is exactly what we are trying to do. Because we are saying to the graduates, start with your individual development plan. Work with a mentor who will guide you through the process. Because sometimes, depending on your exit at the university, you are not necessarily ready to register the same year. But if that information is not out there, or the awareness created, and we are just expecting people to go on the website and find it, I think maybe if we look at it, we should also just do more engagement, you know, combined. And I think with all of those that you have raised, the SACPCMP being the sponsor as well of the podcast, because this is brought to you by the SACPCMP, let's just take a short break and just look at an overview of the SACPCMP registration process. So we'll just do a video that just summarizes the whole process, and of course, it's not all of it, but just to be able to give you an idea of what it entails.
The SACPCMP is a statutory professional body that regulates project and construction management professionals to protect the public. The SACPCMP registers professionals in the following sectors: project construction management, construction health and safety, and building inspectors. In the project construction management sectors, the following people can register: construction managers, construction project managers, and construction mentors. And recent university or tertiary institution graduates can apply to be candidates. In the construction health and safety sector, construction health and safety agents, managers, and officers can register. Recent university or tertiary institution graduates can also apply to be candidates. Building inspectors can register as professional building inspectors. For more details, visit sacpcmp.org.za. Develop, grow, prosper with the South African Council for Project and Construction Management Professions.
Now we're going back to you. This is now out of interest. This question is always asked to women. How do you balance this? So I just want to ask for a question. You are currently enrolled for your PhD in construction management. How do you balance that against all of these other roles? And what really motivated you to further pursue your studies?
Yeah, thanks for that question. I'm just worried that if my wife is listening, she won't agree that I balance anything. But I think as you observe the industry that you are serving from time to time, you reflect on its backlogs. And construction industry is one that is viewed not to have a base of intellectuals. There is a full value chain in construction like in any other industry. So one has to choose where they belong.
Yeah.
Do you belong where the dust is happening and where the brick and mortar are being laid? Do you want to belong in the analysis behind the scene? Do you want to be in the academy? So for me, it's also and always about opening up the horizon of options and choices. If I think I will be on site until very late towards the age of pension, I might be lying to myself because energy will also dictate. Am I even passionate? Maybe not. So for me, I want to influence and I aspire to influence the industry in various platforms, on various platforms. One can be, am I able to mentor while I'm still a professional and serving the industry actively? The balance of experience and qualifications must be able to provide me that as an option. If I identify a gap that I think can be solved by me going to stand in front of students and be an academic and teach, and bring in an element of practical experience and balance it with the curriculum, do I have that option and opportunity? Balancing experience and educational qualifications again will dictate that I can stand in those platforms and have a contribution. But the last aspect of it is that you have to keep on learning. Because if you keep your mind unoccupied as well, it becomes the devil's playground. The backlog of engaging with other industry professionals come out as we speak daily. And it's not a feedback that we really have to give each other. But you can realize that from time to time, those who take platforms have to immerse themselves in learning so that they can mentor and develop those that are behind them. That demands academic development. And if I have to deal with the balance between my industry participation and family, and I take it as it comes, I don't think I have any balance there.
Any solution there?
I agree with you. Balancing is neither here nor there. One is definitely going to suffer. Of course, temporarily so.
Yeah.
And then amongst the highlights of your career, I must say, of which there are many, and quite impressive from where I'm sitting. I'm interested in one because you once established and managed a project management office, at public sector level. Can you give us some insight or share your insights in terms of the significance of PMOs in enhancing project efficiency and success? I am asking that because I am interested specifically because also it was in the public sector. So can you just share some insight so that we have that understanding?
Yeah. So an element of me not disclosing some of the things will come out here.
Yes.
I've never been with one employer at a certain point in time. But every employer I've been with had an impression that I work for them alone. So this is
and
because
you say that boldly now because you're no longer in the
You're no longer
corporate.
in the corporate environment.
There's no HR issue that will arise.
No. So my curiosity for learning has always made me realize that there's no one organization that will offer me all my backlogs of skills at a time. To an extent that even when I was employed by the energy utility ESCOM, I would move from department to department, and that's how I also, in the same organization, I would want to know what's happening in procurement. I would want to know what's happening in the HR offices. What is the plan of development of skills in the near future? But then you realize that in the system you become a headache. So you have to stretch your hands to touch different grounds at the same time. There was never a time where I was not a participant in the private sector. And that was also to balance my learnings of the developments between the public sector and the private sector. Now, coming back to a point of the importance of PMOs and the role they play, I see project management offices as a governance structure of project management. It tells you of the do's and the don'ts of project management. And within it, you house scheduling and planning, which you can't run any project without. Yeah. You house cost estimating, cost management, which you can't also run any project without. You also house resources management of the skills that you need when you are running projects. So in fact, I would say to any organization that is in the industry now, involved in project management, whether project management from a construction perspective or not, they must have a PMO, because documentation will be able to be centralized through a PMO office. The passion for me to work in the PMO spaces and even develop some of them is, how do you create a repository system of an organization? And how do you keep proper records when you don't have PMO? You will struggle. Yes. But if you establish PMO and make sure that everybody has a feed and a contribution in a PMO office, you are safe in terms of your proper records, you are safe in terms of governance, because that's where the policies and the procedures of the organization will also be sitting. Yes. So I'm very passionate about PMO. In fact, it might take a lot of our time, which I'm worried we might not have.
Talk about that.
To talk about that.
Yeah. So in the same vein, what you're talking about PMOs, there is a slow pace in organizations looking at what we call ISO, the ISO standards. ISO meaning International Standards Organization. There are different codes that organizations can certify themselves with and operate with, which is linked to the same ethos of PMOs in terms of structuring your operational mandate, especially if we are in the consulting environment. We talk about ISO 9001, 2015 being the latest that is in the industry. If your organization is not operating with the structure that informs a PMO, then obviously you'll be doing your clients a disfavor, because you're not at an optimum level of operations. So in saying that, we've also realized that you did serve as a non-executive on some boards. I don't want to mention them or to misplace myself, but in serving in those boards, how have they enhanced your leadership skills? And also from a governance point of view, how has the opportunity to serve on those boards amplify the position that you occupy now?
Yeah. Thanks for that question. So I've always been a volunteer. If I want to learn something and I can't get space for it, I go and volunteer and play a role that will give me the skill that I've identified as a gap in my case. Yeah. Why do I do that before I come directly to the question is because when you want to learn something that you don't know and you position the need and demand for money, it's your point of failure. Because what do you know that you want to be paid for? So I have always found and looked curiously for a space to learn what I want to learn. From estates to homeowners associations, I have served in those spaces with curiosity to learn. How are these people governing us while we are residents of these estates?
Yes.
And that's where everything started. Dating back from home, I've always been a participant of the civic organizations, church, soccer team, from playing to managing and leading it as well, just to make sure that I'm balanced in terms of my personal development. Now, coming to my role as non-executive directors of different organizations, it's also driven by the curiosity for different sectors. And I'm very passionate about governance, but you have to know governance and the nitty-gritties of the industry you are involved in, so that your governance is informed. I'm currently a non-executive director at Johannesburg City Power, and there my interest is service delivery, and I happen to be sitting in the service delivery committee as well. How that contributes into my personal development and enhancing my profession is you have to learn taking instructions from different places. You know, when you take instructions from politicians, it's a different atmosphere altogether. Yes. Those are counselors. When you take instructions from shareholders, it's also a different case. So I have learned through participation in the pension funds, which I served at the ESCOM Provident and Pension Funds, that a member who does not sit in any committee and cannot have authority to write you a letter is your boss if you are managing their money. A registered professional at SACPCMP who's paying annual fees is my boss. And if they insult me on LinkedIn, I must go and attend to them. And I deal with those every day. In other roles that I'm playing as well, if I am finding myself in a situation where I have to be responsive to stakeholders because they are questioning the value proposition and what they are paying for, I must understand that they are above me because I'm nothing without them. So in these various governance spaces, you take a different set of skill from each organization and you consolidate those. You'll be surprised if you were to put together your set of skills in bullets.
Yes.
If you are thinking deeply, how many of them will you be able to produce if you are a participant, a volunteer, a passionate role player in various industries? You'll realize that your set of skills actually put you in a better place to engage the country better.
So in saying that, I see there is a shift from corporate. Now you're at a regulatory body. And I see there's a direction of being an entrepreneur. On the flip side, there is a company name we're calling Genuine Tenacity. Can you give us an insight to the entrepreneurial journey now that you are taking after the transition from corporate to regulatory bodies to the mainstream businessman, if we want to call it that way?
Which is also corporate of the ACPM, by the way.
Yeah. So like I said earlier, I had to balance my interests and play in the space so that I appreciate people's pains by also feeling it, not theorizing.
Yes.
So Genuine Tenacity Consulting is my company, which is primarily specializing in project management, quantity surveying, and other engineering disciplines. So I have a lesson around a mistake I've done when I registered the company and when I wanted to start operating. And I think this is a lesson I want to share. When you start certain things, you don't understand the entrepreneurial space and its laws. So this company was established as a CC, a close corporation. And at some point, when I wanted to get ready to jump and play in the field, I got an advice. I still think I was misled, that I must convert this company from CC to PTY. What I didn't know is that the registration number, which was dated 2011, will change and call the year that I'm currently converting to. Now, when somebody says, we are looking for a company that has been in the play for 10 years, my registration number says 2019. I sound like I'm lying. So I'm just passing a lesson that sometimes when you want to introduce a change on any aspect, be aware of the implication of that change and how it's going to be received by those that you are supposed to be serving.
So, a lesson in change management.
Yes.
One of the 9 knowledge areas of the PM book.
No, you've quite touched a lot on the voluntary work. It was a question I was going to ask because I realized that, looking at your profile, there's also quite a lot of voluntary work you still do as well, even at community level. So you keep on saying volunteer, but I think for me, it really says you've got a heart to serve, because when you volunteer, it's actually willingness to serve. As Anthony said, to say, a person will be saying president, only to find out it's really more a role to serve than any other thing, as both of you are sitting here. So I'm fine on that. So I don't think you need to elaborate any further.
Just before we go to the next break or advert, we keep talking about the growth and change in technology in the industry. As far as specifically ours is concerned, which is the built environment. From the SACPCMP's point of view, what is your take in the evolution of technology and where is the direction going from a regulations point of view, so that I think the practitioners out there could start to align themselves to this change that is coming or that is here actually?
I think and you also emphasized change management. If we don't allow ourselves to move with time, change will force itself through us. And we have to ensure that from time to time we are intentional to assess the changes that we are faced with as the industry. The conundrum, though, is that while you bring change, you must also make sure that it does not affect the bread too bad. And what example can I give there? If you think about the 4th Industrial Revolution and what it's doing already in the industry, there's a possibility that in the next 2 years or 3, or depending on the pace of things, you might not need a bricklayer. What does that mean to somebody who went to school and get trained as a bricklayer? If you speak about the energy space, you might not need, because of the climate change as well, you might no longer need intensive coal power stations. What does that mean to the economy of Mpumalanga and other areas? So it's very important for us to balance the changes that we introduce them with the pace of reality when it comes to the economy. If I take over your skill and say this machine will do it, what does that mean to your family? And how long should I give you to prepare to get a new skill? So one, from the council's perspective, we appreciate the role of technology in the industry, but we also boldly call on the industry players to say, look at the pace of this change and appreciate what it's going to do economically in people's pockets. If it means retrain, you must have training programs that are now looking at a direction of some of the skills that are going to get redundant, so that they still have a place to play at, because that's how they survive. Otherwise, you are sending them to the streets and increase criminals ultimately.
I like your input actually when it comes to that. Anthony raised the issue of change management. There's one person that made a remarkable comment that said it's not necessarily change management anymore. We shouldn't talk change management, because then it seems as if we are saying there's something that is ready, there's also already a structure and we just need to manage it. So he says, he calls it change transitioning. I just can't remember who was saying that. It says because it's a process of ever changing, and you are continuously transitioning. You never like fully arrive. And also on what you talked about, to say what does it mean to, you made an example of a bricklayer, and then it says to us as industry, then also how do we then even help the industry players, our registered persons, to say, with this rapid technological changes, how do you prepare yourself, although you can never fully, but how do you upskill, your existing force, because you cannot necessarily lose the people that have the knowledge and the know-how, but it means now they must just do things differently. And maybe that is what could go back to council in terms of validation for CPD, which is a continuing professional development, even as us as VAs, to say, how do we then look even at those other aspects when it comes to CPD itself. Now, with that said, this episode is proudly brought to you by the SACPCMP, and then our last advert, just again to get an overview of the process. We are emphasizing this because we want everybody that needs to be registered to register without delay.
The SACPCMP is a statutory professional body that regulates project and construction management professionals to protect the public. The SACPCMP registers professionals in the following sectors: project construction management, construction health and safety, and building inspectors. In the project construction management sectors, the following people can register: construction managers, construction project managers, and construction mentors. And recent university or tertiary institution graduates can apply to be candidates. In the construction health and safety sector, construction health and safety agents, managers, and officers can register. Recent university or tertiary institution graduates can also apply to be candidates. Building inspectors can register as professional building inspectors. For more details, visit sacpcmp.org.za. Develop, grow, prosper with the South African Council for Project and Construction Management Professions.
As I said, proudly brought to you by the SACPCMP. Last question from me, which actually has two aspects to it in terms of advice to the young professionals. Surely they are listening and are thinking, here is the president having occupied all of this leadership position. So my first aspect to that question is in terms of advice to the young professionals. What advice would you give to young professionals who aspire to reach leadership positions in the industry? That is the first part, because you have those young professionals that are already in the industry. And then the second part to it, when it comes to our young professionals, there are those that are transitioning. Others have just graduated, others are still about to graduate. And there's usually that gap between academia and the mainstream industry. So what advice would you give to them to say, how do they make themselves ready because of that gap? Let me say gap between academia and actual practical knowledge. And that's the last question from me. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's a very important question. For me, I would say young people must focus on getting their priorities in the right sequence. You start by learning, then you get rewards. It can't be the other way around. We have also made mistakes in the growth process that we thought we must be paid first. And I don't know what thinking was that. we even job hopped, if I can use that term. We moved from one employer to another for the sake of an increase of salary, but we were missing the important steps of acquiring skills, because skills are what you're going to sell to get paid. if it means, and I've given an example earlier on that at some point I had to go back home and volunteer at a municipality in order to acquire or bridge the gap of the requirement for in-service training. And there are those we were learning with who gave up the field at that time because they wanted to go to the Big Five, which we knew who Big Five were at the time. And the Big Five could only accommodate as much as well. But a question that a young person has to ask themselves is, in the next 10 years, what will make me relevant in the market? It's the skills that I have to acquire now. What happens if I have a gap of a year and there's no one who's willing to pay me? In fact, there's one fellow during the conference of SACPCMP some time back who said, in fact, I must be paid for training a learner because they know nothing. And I found that point also interesting.
Very interesting point.
Yeah.
It's not spoken about.
So we have to get the priorities right. We have to learn, develop, understand the trends of what is missing in the industry and grab those opportunities and develop ourselves. So that when we are paid by people who know the value of what they are paying and they know how relevant we are in terms of contributing to the growth of the industry. Yeah. Maybe let me just touch on two things that you touched earlier before you went to the advert. When we're talking about, and it's a separate point altogether, when we're talking about the changes imposed by technology, one of the elements that I missed is the social impact of our decisions. It's desirable to transition to the automated world. But we must also think about what we are taking from those who were doing the actual work.
Yeah.
So the pace needs to take a very compassionate balance between how they put bread in their families while they learn new things, which is retraining altogether. And the last point I wanted to touch on when you spoke about us as the council to go out there to make sure that we are known so that students also pick us this knowledge area that they need to register. The SACPCMP is running roadshows that are aiming towards visiting various universities. Okay. And we do that. We invite mentors also to sit on different tables to talk about these professions and how they are panning out to be in the next industry that is going to be more driven by fourth industrial revolution. So we are out there. Yes, there's an area to improve, to talk more, and I keep on saying to our council now, we no longer afford to miss an opportunity to be visible.
That's quite progressive because reading about project management and then talking to the person, sharing insights, will either make you understand, even as a young professional, that there's even more that you still need to do. It's not just the academic qualification.
Just two questions for me in closing. I am very passionate about the word purpose. Personally, I am. I don't know how it affects others in their walks of life. But purpose is critical because if we're not waking up with a purpose, then I think as a nation we are failing. Because I think there is a mentality that says time is money, which is great in the business fraternity or business world. Yes, we sell our time for money. But I think there is a bigger notion that makes us wake up as well in terms of, are you serving the purpose beyond financial gain? So I want to pose that question to you to say, so far with what you have done and achieved, are you in the right direction of purpose to the people and purpose to the nation? I think it's a critical question to ask. So if you can just expand on your own journey, whether you have aligned yourself to serving the bigger purpose of getting people to become better in your walk of life in terms of what you do on a day-to-day basis.
Sure. No, thanks for that question. I think there's a quote that we can extract from an author of books called Miles Monroe, who said, in the absence of purpose, people perish. If we start anything, we must first define it. What is its purpose? Whom is it going to serve? And what benefit are they going to derive? So for me, where I am, I consider myself, I don't see myself as the boss of SACPCMP. In fact, I'm not. I see myself as a servant who must help the industry to achieve, to address the backlogs of infrastructure in the country. Therefore, we must be a conduit that releases the professionals to go out there and address the problems of this country. If anything is not written in the Act of the SACPCMP, the SACPCMP exists to professionalize, to address the skills backlog of this country, particularly for infrastructure development. There's a lot that can be said by the statement, vision and mission. But I think primarily for me, our purpose is to contribute in the industry. If we are saying the industry is running short of professionals, what are we doing? We can't talk that language. We should boost our systems to release professionals to play in the industry. But we also want to be part of the organizations that have a voice, and we are to a certain extent, but we need to also improve that as we continue to improve. There must never be a case where we appear missing. That affects the industry. Our professionals must feel our presence from time to time. Because if I am one on the other side, and there's a development in the industry that I don't see my representative, I'll be worried. And that's the space that the SACPCMP now, I'm sure you would have seen also with the George matter, we were also there and not watching on TV, we were physically there. To say, if we are going to be seeing families crying on TV because of the collapse of the structure that collapsed under our industry, we must be seeing them there. We must feel the pain of sitting in the hall where they are crying, and that's what we did. So it actually speaks about our purpose. Our purpose, we must be present to those who need us, and we must respond to those who need us. And by the way, we are driving that work of our purpose with about less than 40 employees, serving the whole country.
40.
So it's important for the country to appreciate that. It's important for the country to appreciate that, because when you speak about that improvement, you must first improve the revenue.
Yes.
In order to beef up that capacity. So it's for those who keep writing messages that they put all vulgar. It's okay, they are passionate and they are affected, but they also need to understand our capacity, that the country, also even the government, need to assist us in addressing, because we occupy a very important space.
Exactly. I'm so glad you mentioned that point. I think it's a very important point for the public to know, so that when they do apply and wait on the applications, they are fully aware of the capacity issues, because obviously our revenue comes from annual fee intake and application fees and the likes. But we thank you for that input. But just to close up, we are at a space in the country where we are in a very, I'll call it, exciting time. We've got few days to the polls. And I know, obviously, we spoke about stakeholders earlier on. You are also one leg in politics. And I just wanted your view from the council's point of view in terms of where the council sees the current 29 May elections going, and what is the take of the country council in terms of our industry specifically, in light of the political atmosphere that we are in. If you can
Sure.
And your vote is your secret.
balance that question. No, we're not asking him about who he's voting for.
So it's an interesting question because I, as a South African, desire a system that the Chinese are using in their political governance space, called, whether they've written it as a policy, meritocracy, where people must be appointed on the basis of merit, and people must be reinstated on their roles on the basis of delivery and capacity to serve people. For me, I desire to see post-29 May a government that is going to assess, why do we need this minister in the water portfolio? What do they know about water? Why do we need this minister in the infrastructure space? Do they have the appreciation? I do know that from time to time, elections are actually an opportunity to restructure governance in the country. And for me, I also want to see post-elections leaders who are going to reflect and say, where are we in terms of the landscape of governance in this country? What do we need? Do we have some leaders that are no longer relevant? And what do we do with them, even if they've got lobbying power and lobbying capacity? Because at the end of the day, what you are going to need for somebody who's occupying a portfolio is the services to reach the ground. The minister can sit, speak about water policy at whatever platform. My grandmother in my village needs water. That is the outcome, ultimately. So the bottlenecks that we come with sometimes when we restructure for the political part of it, I must have my people there. Are we looking at people that are going to serve these communities? That's what I desire to see. From a council perspective, we are linked with a few ministries, and we wish them well in terms of transition, even continuity where it's needed after the elections.
President Ratsiku, I think we've come to that time. Thank you very much for the opportunity to have this conversation. As I said earlier on, a much needed conversation. I think it would have shed some light on the SACPCMP, I think, which was the focus of this conversation, because we felt it as a need from the SCPM point of view to have this conversation about now, so that it will alleviate some stresses within the industry specifically. So we applaud you for taking time out of your busy schedule. And we hope it's not the end. We will have this robust conversations going forward at some point, and try to then understand what will be your role after the presidency at SACPCMP Council. But thank you so much. It's been a pleasure for us as the ACPM to host you, and all the best in your next endeavors.
That was president to president. And at this time, I just would like to thank the SACPCMP. As I indicated, that this episode is proudly brought to you by the SACPCMP. There are many more that we will be doing in collaboration with the SACPCMP, because together we saw the need to look at those aspects that enhance, or even challenge the construction and project management as a profession and as a discipline. So stay tuned. There'll be more episodes brought to you by the ACPM in collaboration with the SACPCMP. And with that said, I would like to thank the management of the SACPCMP under the leadership of the Registrar, Mr. Puchwa Matutle, for understanding the need to be able to start talking and even bringing solutions, to all of those aspects that enhance and or influence construction management as a discipline.
Thank you, President.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
And thanks to the host.
Thank you. Welcome back.
The SACPCMP is a statutory professional body that regulates project and construction management professionals to protect the public. Professional registration sets professionals apart in the industry. It is proof of competence. It also proves that professionals are properly qualified to practice in accordance with the law and have been independently tested and verified by an impartial statutory body. Registration requires CPD compliance. This means that professionals are continuously aware of and learning about construction industry updates and practices. Professional registration gives employers the assurance that any registered persons who work against the Code of Conduct can be taken to task. Registered persons are also listed on a public national register that designates them as practicing professionals. To find out more, visit SACPCMP.org.za. Develop, grow, prosper with the South African Council for the Project and Construction Management Professions.